I'm going to WhatsApp you every 2 weeks, Karl, so we can stay in contact, okay?
Look out for that WhatsApp every other week.
Well, it works apparently. So
Yeah, that was such a good story. I love that. That was like one of those stories that in 10 years, when you're getting interviewed for the Forbes top 100, you're going to just like reference that story. I think that's going to be gold for everything in the future. Welcome to Find Your Freedom, the best entrepreneurship podcast. Our goal at FYF is to never stop learning and growing. And one of the best ways to learn is to have deep conversations with incredible entrepreneurs. In an effort to grow the Find Your Freedom community, it would mean the world to us if you would follow us on your favorite audio platform, subscribe on YouTube, and share your favorite episodes with friends and family. Our goal is to build a community uniting successful entrepreneurs with aspiring entrepreneurs and providing a one-stop shop for all the resources you need to find your own freedom. We just finished recording with Karl Swanepoel, who shared his incredible story of selling his first company at 15 and getting VC funded while in college. Karl gave great insight on the early stages of a startup, powerful advice for entrepreneurs, and a fascinating take on AI. This is a great episode. Enjoy. Yo. Welcome, Karl. Super excited to have you on with us today.
Thanks very much for having me.
Hey, Karl, we're so excited to have you on the Find Your Freedom podcast. We like to start off by reflecting back on something that was special in your journey coming up. What milestone or achievement would you say you're most proud of in your career so far?
I mean, probably on a macro scale, the company that I have right now, Revelance, and the team that we have behind the company. But I think probably on a smaller scale, raising a pre-seed round from a VC. Probably 3 months after graduating. I thought that was quite a good achievement. Something I'm very proud of.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, you're being modest. So yeah, I mean, I think you're one of you're probably the first FYF guest to have sold a company before you're even legally able to drive. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yes, I did. So basically, I built a freelancing marketplace when I was 15. And long story short, I had to sell it because I was under 18, and PayPal doesn't allow people under 18 to have accounts. So as people were actually starting to buy things on the marketplace, they would lock my account and try and get me to verify who I am to unlock it. And I could answer every single question just fine, except for prove that I'm over 18. So I ended up having to sell it. So I ended up selling that website a few months after starting it.
That is so wild. I've never heard of someone having to sell a company because they're a minor. That's
good problem to have.
That's a new one. So what inspired you originally to become an entrepreneur? When did you get that stroke of or itch, I guess, to become an entrepreneur?
I mean, I've always kind of liked doing things my way, or like just finding new ways of doing things. And then when I was around 13, I just kind of got the idea in my head that I wanted to work for myself and that I wouldn't be happy working for someone else. I don't know, how that thought kind of came to me, but it really stuck around, and everything that's happened over the past 10 years has just reaffirmed that, in my mind. So now I'm very happy doing what I do, and I wouldn't want to do anything else.
All right, beautiful. So tell us now in your own words, what does your current company Revelancer do, and what has set the company apart in your opinion?
Yeah, sure. So basically we're just all about giving freedom back to freelancers and improving the whole freelancing space for the better. When I was 13 and decided that I wanted to work for myself, actually went into freelancing and used existing freelancing platforms. Really wasn't happy with those. That's actually why I started my own, instead of using the competitor sites. I was actually freelancing on my own platform as well as managing it. But, kind of, it got to a couple of years ago when we were in a COVID lockdown, and and obviously COVID changed the way that we work remotely, so video calling is a big part of it. And I was looking back at these freelancing platforms that I used many years before, and where I thought that they were outdated and not good for the industry back then, well, they hadn't changed anything over the course of about 8 years. They had changed nothing. They still haven't changed anything, in the present day, to another 2 years later. And one of the things about these platforms is they don't allow video calling, for example, and they can't allow video calling because of the way that they generate revenue. So, I kind of thought enough is enough, and wanted to do something about it and change the industry for the better.
So is your current company then kind of related to the first company you started in your teens?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so both were freelancing marketplaces. There are some fundamental differences, but on the whole, quite similar. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe just a little more sophisticated now that you're about a decade later into your career.
Yeah, I'd say so. The original platform that I built, I think was, well, I look back at it now and cringe, but I think ultimately that means that I've progressed, which is, at the end of the day, a good thing.
Yeah, there's that famous startup quote that said, if you're not embarrassed of your first iteration, then you waited too long to get to market. So I think that's probably a good sign because you got to let the market tell you if it's a good idea or not, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a Reid Hoffman quote.
There you go. Can you tell us a little bit how you got Revolancer, the early stages? How did you get it off the ground? Kind of where'd you start from and how did it kind of progress to where it is now where you've got thousands and thousands of people using it?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, I was in university still at the time, halfway through my final year. I knew that I wanted to start a company going out of uni. That's where I started looking at, kind of what I knew where I started with these freelancing marketplaces and realized they hadn't changed anything other than maybe updating their design a little bit, but not really changed anything. Um, and then I also saw that my university had a startup competition where basically you can like enter. It's a bit like Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, which you may be a bit more used to, but kind of a mini version of that where you pitch to a panel of judges. And then there are a few prizes, like nothing huge, but definitely makes a big difference to an early stage startup.
Right.
The main prize is £10,000, and then there are a couple others too, like smaller prizes. And essentially, I spent about 3 months, really getting ready for that competition, just refining the pitch, really understanding my audience, already starting to putting together some partnerships. Then entered that. I was fortunate enough to win both of the main cash prizes, so a total of £13,000. And then essentially using that, well, not quite using that, but at that point, I connected with my co-founder. We then built the first version of the platform together, kind of used the money to pay for servers, various other things, marketing and stuff that we needed to get the platform launched and get the first, I think it was 150 or so users. And then at that point, a few months later, we raised our pre-seed round, and then we were able to scale from there. But I think kind of the key takeaway is that we built all of the tech in-house. And if you're a founder of a tech startup and you don't know how to code or how to build a product, I'd highly recommend teaming up with somebody who does. And in my case, I mean, I studied computer science, so I could kind of build it myself, but I teamed up with someone who can do that much better than me so that I can focus on the stuff that I'm good at.
That's awesome. So between the two of you, you put together the code, and then how exactly did you build from it? Sound like your first 150. Did it kind of organically grow? What was your marketing angle to start scaling that way?
Yeah, sure. So we have at that point had and today have a lot more, but various different marketing campaigns that work well. But kind of at its core, we have from the beginning and still focus on building a platform that freelancers really love and that really solves their problems and solves the problems caused by some of these other players in the industry. So at its core, a lot of our growth comes from word of mouth, because freelancers use it, love the platform, and then tell other freelancers about it, because freelancers are, I mean, it's kind of like being an entrepreneur, a bit of a lonely road, but equally, that means you can talk a lot to other freelancers, and they tend to be in Facebook groups, co-working spaces. Yeah.
That makes total sense. And then how is it? I know there's two or three really big gorillas in your market. So how are you able to set yourself aside? What is it the specific piece that sets Revolancer aside from the other gorillas that you guys are battling?
Yeah, sure. So these big gorillas tend to charge about 25% commission on every transaction.
From the actual end.
Most of it from the freelancers. So
Gotcha.
one particular gorilla charges 20% to the freelancer and then 5% to the client.
Interesting.
And essentially because of that, they can't allow video calling, right? Because if you were to hop on a video call, exchange email or whatever, you'll arrange to pay outside the platform and not pay that ludicrous commission fee.
Right.
So basically, we solve those two problems in one go by not charging commission fees. So you can video call, you can talk off platform. We don't charge a commission fee. So that's kind of how we, kind of stand apart from them primarily. But then the other thing is what we're building now is a platform that facilitates service exchanges between freelancers. That's going to launch in the coming weeks now, and that's not something that these big gorillas do whatsoever. So that's something new.
Oh, that's super exciting. That's awesome. I was wondering, what is it, if you could pinpoint what the biggest struggle you had in that early stage of setting it up post uni? What was the biggest challenge you had, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Actually, funnily enough, it's I guess, to use the word gorilla again, I guess more accurately now. One of the other one of the gorillas took issue with our previous company name,
No.
alleged that it was infringing on their on their trademark. It was complete nonsense, but and I spoke to a trademark lawyer who told me that this is nonsense. But ultimately, unfortunately, it's the biggest wallet wins. And at that
Right.
point, we were running low on kind of the price funding that I had secured before the pre-seed round. So we then basically in the space of a day had to come up with a new name. I think given that Revelance is a very good name.
Yeah, it worked out good. Well done.
When your back's up against the wall, it forces you to rise to the challenge and meet the moment, right?
It does, absolutely. So, even though we had no fees to pay for lawyers, I managed to negotiate with the law firm representing that, entity, and we managed to, convince them to give us a couple of months to kind of slowly transition the name over, just so there wasn't some huge disruption to the users, and that's all in the past now. But I remember like getting the email. I think it was 1 a.m. I don't know why I was still up reading emails at that point, but I was about to go to sleep.
Because you're 20 years old.
Yeah, your trademark has been challenged, and then yeah, I thought the company was going to die.
How did you get on their radar so early on, Karl, as a small fish just starting out? How were you already on this huge gorilla's radar?
I don't know. My best guess is that they had some kind of a keyword search on trademark filings that's very, very broad because, again, the name isn't that similar. Um, but yeah, ultimately, I don't know. It might be that someone on their team spotted it. I mean, like, ultimately, I think these other platforms, the more we scale, are going to become increasingly unhappy with us because we can say you're worth more than a fiver and you don't need to pay commission fees, and that's something that
Right.
doesn't sit well with some of these larger platforms.
Yeah, yeah. As a disruptor, that's kind of a big challenge that you will have, trying to change the way to make it more fair and more beneficial for your customers. I love that. I'm really interested. I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into how you at the core kind of became an entrepreneur. Was it your father that was also entrepreneurial? You had other influences. It seems like it's really obviously since you started, companies at pre-15. Like what was at the core that really got this into your system?
Actually, funnily enough, I don't really know. So the reason why I sold that website when I was 15 and why I didn't just ask my parent. Well, the reason why my parents just didn't help me by having a PayPal account in their name is I went and I asked them, could I have a PayPal account in your name so I can keep running this platform? And they said, no way, we don't want to lose the house. Neither of my parents are entrepreneurs or anything remotely close to that. No one in my direct family really is.
Risk averse, huh?
Yeah, definitely risk averse. So I don't really know where it came from. I have no idea, but
That's probably the best answer you could have. It's just natural and in you. That's really incredible because most people are, where it's like, oh, I saw this person doing that and it really kind of, I try to mimic that, or, I was just following my father's footsteps. It's kind of the normal response. So I think that's really awesome that you were able to just naturally like find your way with that.
Yeah, I think that's so rare because I know Jonathan, until getting into his late 20s, really didn't have any thought to becoming an entrepreneur.
Right.
And for me, watching my dad run his small business all my life was kind of what I had as a model to kind of aspired to. But yeah, so I guess it was just literally in your veins, and was just waiting for the right moment for you to identify, a need, I guess, in the marketplace to come in and start offering these opportunities to contractors.
And Doug, hearing you say that, it just really is like that was kind of the catalyst, Carl, of why we started Find Your Freedom, is because I didn't even know behind the curtain of being an entrepreneur until my late 20s. I was very corporate before. So we wanted to kind of pull the curtain aside for all these college students or young people getting out of college, or people that are in a corporate job like I was, that wanted another opportunity, that were unfulfilled and unhappy. And so that's kind of why we created Find Your Freedom, to help people see how other successful entrepreneurs have done it, and that there is another side of the world. Because I think maybe it's different in the UK. Maybe you can explain that for us. But in the US, I do feel kind of we're trained from an early age, like go get a good corporate job, go work that 9 to 5. Like this is the way that you have to do it. And it's almost like the American dream has kind of almost shifted to where entrepreneurs are villainized. And, the corporate people are like, I'm so proud of you for working 12-hour days. Like, yeah, that's the way to do it. Like spend all your life working until you're 65, and then you can retire and start living a really good life. So is it different like that in the UK? Yeah, I mean, you're already having competitions, in school to be an entrepreneur. So is it a different culture there?
Based on everything I've seen, the US is far more entrepreneurial than the UK overall. Yeah, I mean, and that's based on just kind of perception, what I've heard from different people, but then also knowing my, kind of American investors, American entrepreneur contacts, versus kind of, similar people in the UK and Europe. So yeah, I mean, from where I'm sitting, I thought the US was much more entrepreneurial than the UK.
Yeah, obviously we still have that in our DNA, but I think definitely like there's a shift to where now like Elon and Bezos, like they're actually villainized for their success, even though they've created all these jobs, they've created all this tax revenue for the country, they've done these really incredible things. I just kind of feel this negative push towards entrepreneurship, or maybe it's just the success that some of the biggest entrepreneurs have had. But yeah, I thought I'd check and see how Europe does over there. So it's good to know. Your investment group is from the US?
I have investors from around the world, or well, I should say we have investors from around the world.
Yeah, and how did you get on their radar? Did you just send out a deck and request meetings? How does that work for the process?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much just reaching out to random people. I mean, some of my investors did come from warm intros from advisors or other investors that I already have on board. But actually, most of them came from just cold outreach, because I was kind of a recent uni graduate who, my parents have nothing to do with the world of business. No one in my family really does. I didn't really have any contact, so I just went out there and made some, I guess. Yeah, but I think the good news is you absolutely can do that. You absolutely can build a network, kind of from scratch.
Yeah, I was curious, being that you're kind of a natural, Carl, from what we can tell so far. Um, were there folks that came in and helped you level up more quickly and accelerated your growth? Mentors, coaches, people that were kind of played that role in your early years?
100%. So in the lead up to that competition at my university, I called with more than 30 individuals who I all, you know, kind of contacts that I got from all over the place, who knew something about pitching or business, or entrepreneurship. And I got feedback from them. Doesn't mean I listened to, implemented everything they told me, but I listened, because then I could make much better decisions. And that's something that I've kept the whole way along. I think someone who's made an enormous difference in my journey so far is a guy called Matt Brady, who's an advisor of ours, and he is a co-founder of Just Eat, which is kind of like Uber Eats before Uber Eats in the UK. And he grew them from a tiny startup to a multi-billion pound IPO. They've now merged with takeaway.com, and he was their CMO. So he
Wow.
ran several award-winning marketing campaigns. He was also the first person to create a political party as like a marketing stunt. And their goal, the political party's like goal, was to just ban cooking. That was the only thing on their manifesto. So they, so he's a real marketing genius. And he, and after leaving Just Eat, he also started another company. So he is, an absolutely fantastic mentor, and I've learned a huge amount from him.
How do you bring in a mentor like that?
That's actually quite a long, but also quite a funny story. So basically, when I was 18, I got an office on my local high street within like a web agency that I set up. And like getting an office at that time was just such a stupid idea because, anything that would have been profits went straight into the rent. It was also 100% a vanity metric. I just, I have no shame in saying that. I mean, maybe I should be a bit ashamed, but, just kind of saying that, I have my own office, blah, blah, blah. I want to go to the office, go and work from there, all this kind of stuff. It was like this small room above like a flooring company that they were renting out. So it wasn't even anything that
And this is
special.
during college?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Just before I went to university, actually, the summer before. And well, basically, one thing that office was really good for is attracting the attention of the local newspaper. So my small town's local newspaper did this big, 18-year-old gets high street office kind of thing in their business section about me. And then I got an email from somebody who said, he was an entrepreneur in the local area and he wanted to meet up because he read, about me in this small newspaper. And I said, sure. I didn't Google him at all. I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't look into who he was at all. Just gave him the address of the office, said, okay, come over. He then arrived. He came on his bicycle. He had like a long beard, kind of, hair in a top knot. He wanted to vape before he came in. So I was kind of thinking, who the heck did I invite without looking who he was? But then, the second he got inside, within about 30 seconds of just talking, I realized who he was and the fact that he had built and co-founded and built a multi-billion-pound company. And I was just like, no matter what, I cannot let this contact go. And then basically before I left, I tried to impress him as much as I could. I got his WhatsApp contact. And then for about 2.5 years, I would every few months just reach out to him, kind of update him on something, ask him a question, wish him a Merry Christmas, whatever it was, just kind of, touched base. So he kind of remembered who I was, but I didn't have any specific project that I wanted to work with him on at the time. And then when it came to setting up Revolancer, and getting ready for that competition, I just watched, because he built obviously a two-sided marketplace, a very successful two-sided marketplace. So I thought he'd be a brilliant advisor for this. So I reached out to him, basically said, here's what I'm looking to build. Do you want to be an advisor? 2.5 years later, comes back, says, no, I'm busy, can't. Then I thought, okay, well, either he's going to be an advisor or he's going to have to block me. So what I did is every 2 weeks, I sent him like a little newsletter on WhatsApp of just like bullet point, just updating. So, over the past week, over the past 2 weeks, I did this. I spoke to this person, secured this partnership, figured out this problem. Just like a few bullet points every couple of weeks. I did that for about 2 months. He ignored me every single time. He read the message, ignored me every time. Then it got to a few days before the competition. And I just kind of said to, hey, I have a pitch ready. Have you been getting my messages, by the way? He comes back, says, yes, I've been getting your messages. I've been ignoring you. And then he said, okay, fine, let's get on a call.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Persistence.
Success.
There we go. Yeah. So then I got him on a call, pitched to him. Then he basically asked me, like, do you want to win this competition or do you want to actually start this business? And I said to him, I actually want to start the business. And then he said, okay, I'll be your advisor. So
beautiful.
It took a while, but also the great thing is now, just from a credibility perspective, he advises 2 startups. One of them has raised 220 million pounds. And then the other one is us. We're absolutely tiny in comparison to that.
So you're not the one. Just to be clear, you're not the one that's raised 220.
Not yet.
So it sounds like that was a beautiful story. It sounds like had you not gotten that office that you said was kind of a waste of money from a rent standpoint, you may not have landed the most influential mentor of your entire career. What What would you say is the biggest takeaway lesson from the story you just told in that experience?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's to think about failure in a different way. I mean, we see failure as a bad thing, but I don't regret getting that office at all because it led to that. It led to a bunch of other really positive things too. Even just the learning experience of it. So I think it's all about failing forward. It's like making the most of every situation, no matter how it turns out, rather than just getting upset about it and giving up or wasting an opportunity.
And on that point, Carl, what do you think luck plays into it? Happenstance versus like, this is my intentional vision. Like, how do you think about those factors in someone reaching eventual success?
I mean, I think luck plays a huge role. I really do. But at the same time, I also think that if we are constantly working very hard, taking opportunities, putting ourselves out there and learning, you can increase the amount of like lucky situations that you find yourself in. So I do think that luck plays a role. A lot of this is outside of our control. I think that I was born with certain abilities. I was born into a family that could support me well. Was able to go to university. Different things like this, which are luck. They're not any kind of accomplishments. Um, but I think that the best thing that we can kind of do is to acknowledge that the world isn't fair. There are some ways in which I'm very privileged. There are some ways in which other people are far more privileged than me. Um, but ultimately, it's about just making peace with that and then doing the best you can with what you have, and just really pushing forward. I think that's the best way to kind of treat the world, and that's certainly how I do.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to play the hands that you're dealt, right? So there's a lot of people, Carl, in this audience. I think Jonathan spoke to this earlier, that are unfulfilled in their current jobs, and they're toiling away. One of our guests said beavering away in their office, and they don't enjoy what they're doing. They don't see the beautiful vision in front of them to be able to get out from under it. What advice do you have for those people, young and old, who just are not gaining the fulfillment that they want out of their life and career?
Well, I mean, it depends how you look at it, but in some ways, life is short. Life is certainly too short to waste time being in a place that doesn't fulfill you when you could be doing something else. And then the second thing I'll add to that is I think it's important to just rethink how you kind of think about just taking action or not taking action, because choosing not to leave a situation you're unhappy with is also a risk. It's also an action in and of itself, right? So um ultimately everything in life is a choice. Choosing to do something, choosing not to do something, that's also a choice. So I think the best thing to do is to in a responsible way follow what makes you happy, and kind of go from there. I think it's really important to be honest with what it is that makes you happy, because I think like in society we're kind of told what things should make us happy, but oftentimes, maybe you align perfectly with that, but the chances you don't align perfectly with that as an individual. So it's really worth taking the time to think about what's truly important to you. And it might be that, for example, helping people is far more important to you than having a lot of money. In which case, leave the job where you're making a lot of money and work on something where you can help people, because that will make you happier. It'll make you feel more fulfilled. So yeah, I think it's just important to be super honest with yourself about your kind of belief system and what's important to you, and then make choices in your life that put you on a path, more in the direction of where you want to end up, rather than where society tells you should be going.
I love that answer. I think that's really wise to be able to recognize that there's risk in staying in the situation that you're in if you're unhappy and unfulfilled and depressed. There's a risk in that, and then there's also the other side of the coin, that the obvious risk in leaving it and going out into the unknown. So I think that's a really wise way to kind of reset your perspective to appropriately understand. There's risk on both sides of it. I love that you said that. One of the things that I really was looking forward to asking about is I know that you had studied AI in school, and I'm sure that there's a piece of it that goes along with Revolancer also. I was curious how you thought AI was going to impact the world this year, and then where you see it impacting the world in just 3 or 5 years.
Yeah, so my degree title is artificial intelligence and robotics. Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, frankly, I kind of don't want to have famous last words here, but like at the risk of that, in my opinion, I think that a lot of
We
the
won't hold you to it, Karl.
good, I think that a lot of the current kind of media narrative around things like ChatGPT is completely overblown. I mean, I think ChatGPT is a very impressive toy, but ultimately, and in some degrees, it's a very useful tool, sure, but in other ways, it's actually quite dangerous. Like, and not dangerous in the way of replacing people, but dangerous in terms of disrupting reality, I guess, because ChatGPT has no way of fact checking its answers. ChatGPT is just a very advanced like on your phone when you type and it predicts what word you're going to say next. It's just a very advanced version of predictive text that's been trained on, I think, about 5 million web pages. So it's very good at saying things that sound great in response to an answer. But then again, also, I read that ChatGPT was tested on a specialist exam for doctors who want to sort of specialize in a certain area. And part of that was giving symptoms for 3 kind of different conditions and then having to say what it likely is. And ChatGPT tried that. It got the first one right. It got the first one wrong. And then the third one, it made up a disease to diagnose the person for those symptoms. It made up a name, made up a description of that disease, because it's not a sentient thing. It isn't thinking. It's just kind of based on all the text that it's absorbed, trying to think what's the like, probably the best word next in the sequence.
Interesting.
So
Hmm.
a lot of the narrative around ChatGPT, especially by Microsoft, has been using it, kind of in place of a search engine or like supplementary to a search engine.
Right.
I think that's a terrible idea because search engines are all about finding factual answers. It's not like, trying to copyright something or whatever. Where there, I think ChatGPT is strong for like sort of creative writing and stuff like that. But when it comes to factual things, it's very dangerous because it writes in a very, very convincing way. It doesn't
Right.
say, "Oh, I'm not sure about this." It writes in a very certain way, and it doesn't know what it's writing. Yeah,
It's very overly confident, huh, Karl?
exactly. So
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, I'm very impressed by ChatGPT. In other ways, I think the media narrative around it is completely overblown in terms of how dangerous it is. I do think that, automation replacing human jobs is like an ever increasing problem, where there aren't really. I mean, there are some okay suggestions like a universal basic income, but there are still flaws with that. And ultimately, I don't think there are any really good answers at this point. But when I say automation, I'm not talking about like super advanced AI. I'm talking about things like, self checkouts in supermarkets and things like that. Just putting self checkouts in a supermarket. That's not, smart AI or whatever, but that can still replace dozens of jobs in a single store. So
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's kind of cyclical. Every 15 years or so, people start really getting into this mindset that AI is going to be huge. It's we're on the cusp of it being taking over humans now, and it's going to change the world. Investors pour money into it. People just kind of go crazy about it, and then when it doesn't live up to the hype, the interest level drops. and then we have that cycle again. Then we wait a bit. Then 15 years later, again, this kind of thing happens.
So it's not for real this time.
I don't think so.
Gotcha.
And this is maybe one of those famous last words, but yeah, I don't think so. I really don't.
We'll play this back for you in 5 years.
Yeah. If it's not AI, then what would you tell our audience? Like, here's some of the low-hanging fruit that I see out there for entrepreneurs that I think you should get into. Like, what would your recommendation be for that entrepreneurs out there? Like, I don't know what to get into.
Find a problem or kind of an audience of people that you're really passionate about helping, and then speak to them to try and find the idea. Because I think, and this is something I did for the longest time, a mistake that I made. And that's kind of when you start a business, thinking about like, what do I think would be a cool idea, then building it, and then like pushing it onto people. And I think that's just the way that society in general thinks about starting businesses, and it's just not a smart way to do it. The right way, in my view, to do it is to identify a problem or like a key audience that you want to help, and then speak to them, truly understand what their problem is and how you can solve it, and like test the solution with them. And when you really understand your target audience and really understand the problem, only then can you build an effective solution. You might get lucky. So for example, I think Facebook is a brilliant example of this. So Mark Zuckerberg, I think, got incredibly lucky. He created something that was basically a ripoff of other social networks at the time. But what he got right is launching it within certain college campuses, having it be kind of an exclusive thing where there was a lot of hype around it, and then it kind of got a lot of traction within these closed communities before they open it up to the world. So I think they got incredibly lucky. They also got backing from Peter Thiel at a very early stage, and Peter Thiel is
Right.
incredibly established person. Now,
Right.
I wouldn't want to get lucky, right? Because the problem is, if you get lucky and you build something, then at anything, you haven't actually learned how to come up with a good idea. So have you heard of Facebook Poke? Not like the kind of the function of poking, but their Snapchat ripoff called Facebook
Yes,
Poke.
of course. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That's not around anymore.
So where is that now? Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg thought that was a great idea. He, in fact, he taunted the Snapchat founders after trying to buy their company by saying, I'm going to launch this. Hope you enjoy Poke. I think he emailed them. And then it just died after a few months. Also, most recently, Meta, the metaverse, even their own employees don't want to use that stuff. The whole world is telling them this is garbage. People don't want to use it. And that, I think, is a good example of somebody who got lucky. He got lucky that Facebook was the right idea, but he never went through that process of failing and like really learning to understand what the audience wants and building for the audience. He kind of went through his journey and his life, frankly, at this point, being told that, he's this brilliant entrepreneur with fantastic ideas, can't do anything wrong. And now suddenly when things start not going his way, he doesn't know what to do.
That's super interesting.
So, ultimately, I think that's the best way to go about starting a business, to really understand your audience and really understand the problem. And only then can you have a good guess at what the right solution is, because you'll still probably need to iterate a few times, but that way you start much closer to the destination than otherwise.
That's such great advice. Yeah, I love that. Find the pain point and speak to the people who are having that pain, and then you can find the solution and diagnose and create, a real lasting solution for them. I think that's great advice. What would you define? This is kind of a personal question that we ask every guest that I love. How would you personally define entrepreneurship?
I think it's very akin to like a kind of a problem solver. It's like, much like how an engineer is also a problem solver, but it's kind of a problem solver in a commercial business kind of context, whereas an engineer is obviously a problem solver in, well, some kind of specific industry, or a scientist is a problem solver in whatever they do. So yeah, I guess problem solver in a capitalist problem solver.
I love that. And then if there's maybe one or two things that you would say, I attribute my success most to these one or two traits, what would they be? I can say one before you answer. I can say one just from the short phone call the podcast that I've gotten. It's perseverance. Just your story about the follow through and the tenacity to stay after that advisor. Like, to me, that story immediately showed me the perseverance you have to just, I'm gonna find a way to make it work. And I think that really like appropriately illustrates like how you're willing to have that grit to make it happen. You knew that was a valuable contact and you were going to make it happen. All right, now I'll let you actually answer the question.
No, absolutely. I think persistence definitely. The other one is I don't. So the first thing I was going to say in answer to your question is I don't consider myself successful. I hope I will be one day, but I don't consider myself successful today. And I think that links into my second answer, which is I like to think that I have an accurate, understanding of what I can do, what I can't do, and where I need to learn, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, that kind of thing. And because of that, I surround myself with great people. So I work with advisors constantly who know more than I do. And again, that doesn't mean I listen to or like follow every piece of advice they give me, but it means that I have a bigger picture. I have more variables I can look at when making a decision. I also I only hire people who are much better than I am at whatever task they're going to do. Whereas I've told other entrepreneurs and other people that they're always shocked by that, which frankly I'm shocked by, because if you kind of have to leave your ego at the door if you want to build a successful company. A company is a collective of people trying to solve a certain problem, and you can't make it work without the people. And if you are kind of saying, I must be the smartest, most able person in the company, and I won't let anyone else in who makes me, who like threatens my ego, then you're really limiting your organization. I think you should always try and strive to be the dumbest person in the room. That doesn't mean like dumb in terms of intelligence, but you know you need to work with other people who have very strong strengths where you have weaknesses, and perhaps you have very strong strengths where they have weaknesses, and that way you can really complement each other. So yeah, I'd say it comes down to perseverance, absolutely, but then also having a good understanding of yourself, being humble and realistic, and then working with great people to help you achieve what you want to achieve.
Carl, I love how humble you are. I mean, I think a lot of people would consider you extremely successful, especially considering your age. I consider you very successful for what it's worth. Now, getting to work at such a young age, I think that's one of the interesting, fascinating pieces of your story is how young you were when you started that first company. Did you have to forego a lot of the social things that most teenagers are getting into? And do you feel like you kind of missed out on some of that? And then also, secondly, what does your social life look like today?
Yes, absolutely. I think I missed out on a lot of the kind of social aspects, but I had a great friendship group, who I'm still friends with today at school. But I mean, ultimately, you could just as well argue that somebody who really took advantage of the kind of like the party life in school missed out on learning about entrepreneurship, and maybe they wouldn't be interested in that. But ultimately, my point is like you're always going to every choice you make, you're going to miss out on a lot of different things. So, I mean, like,
Right.
I don't think I've ever really experienced FOMO. It's not something which I personally understand that well. 'Cause it's not really something I experience. Um, Maybe that's just arrogance and like, thinking that being very headstrong and, thinking my decisions are the right decisions for me. But I don't know. But yeah, I mean, ultimately today, I would like to ideally have a sort of more active social life. I realized that, a couple of months ago and have been making steps to make that happen. But I mean, if you are starting or running an early stage startup, the reality is that oftentimes you will have to work longer than the sort of typical 9 to 5 hours. You will kind of have to probably put work in on over the weekend. But I think ultimately, especially at an early stages, it's very hard to disconnect from work. So like what I notice
Right.
myself doing, which I consciously make an effort to stop now, is I'll always start talking about work when I'm talking to people like outside of work. It's just because it's like absolutely fascinating to me, but I have to watch out for that, and I do. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, I don't regret my decision to focus on building websites that all failed, rather than have a more active social life, because I did have a very kind of fun time at university from like a social perspective, and then in my final year I decided to put everything that I learned together and start Revolancer. So yeah, I think it worked out okay.
Yeah, it seems like you really truly enjoy what you do, Carl. And so probably a lot of times when you're working super, super hard, maybe it doesn't even feel like work because you're so passionate and love what you do. Now, for somebody that is starting up a company, you spoke to kind of the trade-offs of, I may have to work more than the guy next to me because of what I'm trying to accomplish out here. What's your philosophy on time management?
Yeah, I mean, it is something that it's changed over time, or I think it's like evolved for the better. So at the beginning, I completely bought into this idea of like just more hours is better. So I was working easily 10, 12 hour days, 6 days a week, plus then on the Sunday, more often than not, I'd also do some work. I burned myself out horribly. It was such a stupid idea. I didn't manage to be that productive if you look at just impressive things I did, rather than just like how many emails did I write, how much this did I do. So it's changed in the sense that now I think it's much more important what you do rather than how much time you take doing it. And if you can achieve something in less time, then do it in less time. And the other thing is quit while you're ahead. So another thing, like if I don't know, I've worked like 6 or 7 hours on a certain day, and I'm absolutely just winning on that day with lots of different things. I quit while I'm ahead. I end the day early. I go and have a meal out with my partner or something like that. Like I think the real key to making sure you can stay productive over the long run is knowing when to stop. And one quote, and I'm someone who gets very, very obsessive about what I do, and really have to watch myself so I don't completely go overboard. But one quote that has really helped me understand this properly is that starting a business is a marathon, not a race. And the key thing in a marathon is that for basically the whole run, you have to purposefully run slower than you are able to make it to the end. And I think that in life and business, that's a very powerful quote. So having a good balance and, just preserving yourself over the long run, I think that's much more important than trying to work a 20-hour day or some nonsense like that.
That's such a great point. Yeah, I think that's super valuable recommendation for a lot of people who are starting their own companies or working on their ideas. I went through that also early on. Just kind of like start grinding away, and it's almost just like there's always something to be doing, so you just keep going, and it can lead to burnout and potentially to the failure, even though you could be close to success. Just the burnout can really cause. Your story is like super interesting, and I think that you're obviously super wise beyond your years. And I think the entrepreneurial advice you gave today, Karl, was just really insightful for the audience. So we super appreciate you sharing your incredible success story. And there's obviously levels of success. So I love that there's a lot of goals you haven't attained. So that success, maybe in your 30s or 40s, you allow yourself to say that the success is coming in. But thanks so much for coming on with us today.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me. It's my pleasure. I hope it was useful to your audience, some of what I said. And yeah, I wish everyone the best of luck who wants to be an entrepreneur.
Thanks so much.
Karl, you provided so many gems. Thank you so much, my man.
If there's a place that you want us to send people that want to talk to you, reach out to you, or learn more about Revolancer, where should we send them?
Well, Revolancer you can get to at revolancer.com or by Googling it. And then probably the best way to reach out to me is via LinkedIn. So if you just look up my full name on LinkedIn, you'll find me.
Awesome. All right, we'll put the LinkedIn link in our show notes. And thank you again so much for your time, Karl. This was a really incredible story.
Yeah, thank you very much.